Hey, it's Noreen. I'm going to try and do a virtual presentation since I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. So here we go. My presentation is on the iPhone and its role in globalization, specifically with regards to economics. So I chose to make my visual map as a Prezi with an image of the iPhone as the main picture. And the reason that I chose this image is because it's the interface that we are all so familiar with. So for anyone that has an iPhone or has ever seen or played with an iPhone, that is what makes it so valuable. It's user-friendly appeal, simple design, and the ability for it to be so easily customized with apps. So customers are actually eager to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars and sign contracts with mobile carriers that end up costing them thousands of dollars over the course of years just to be able to have a phone with this interface in their pocket, an iPhone. And this investment, while it is supposed to last years and years, it hardly ever actually does, because I don't know if anyone here has an iPhone, but if you do, you'll know that it's literally a ticking time bomb with partial coverage and optional insurance. So after just a couple drops, which are inevitable, any water damage at all, or the latest, newest model of the phone comes out, the once cutting-edge technology that you have paid so much money for, or did at one point, suddenly becomes obsolete, and we're on to the next, the newer, the better iPhone, and out with the old. So the purpose of my presentation today is to kind of shed some light on the impacts of our purchasing decisions on a global scale, specifically in relation to the main manufacturing plant for iPhones in China, which I'm sure some of you have heard of already. So I want to go ahead and quantify how significant the iPhone is on the mobile phone market. So I have a couple numbers for you. The iPhone 4S, which is the latest model with Siri, which we've all seen the commercials for, the launch of that was the biggest launch for any smartphone in the history of cell phones ever. And last year, Apple sold 72 million iPhones, which brought the total number of iPhones shipped to this day to 140 million. And in less than 5 years, the iPhone has become Apple's most important product. Revenue from the iPhone last year was $47 billion, and that's actually now more than 40% of Apple's total revenue. So the big thing here is that Apple is managing to basically make incredible profits in this pretty low margin industry of cell phones, and that's helped Apple become the most profitable and wealthiest company in the world with $108 billion in profit.
You can see us.
So here's an image showing the cost of an iPhone, and you can see it ranges from about $100 to $650, depending on how much storage space you want on your phone and whether or not it comes with a contract and so on. But the average cost of an iPhone without a contract is $560. Now that leaves me wondering how much Apple actually makes off each iPhone. With the total components cost being $178 and the average price of a phone being $560, the amount that goes towards actually putting the components together is $14 an iPhone. And that goes to Foxconn, and half of that is straight profit. The other half goes to pay for powering the plant, electricity, lighting, and labor. So you can imagine the wages the laborers over there are making. And that leaves Apple's slice. So 178 plus 14, take that away from 560, leaves you $368 for Apple. And that's not completely profit. That still goes to the designers and the software and everything. But Apple does get a huge chunk off of every single iPhone sale. So here's a map showing where the main components of the iPhone come from, with the United States, Italy, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. And that's just where the parts are from. We're not even seeing where they're being put together, where the design takes place. It is just solely where the components are coming from. So the main reason there are so many concerns and why Apple has been getting so much heat lately regarding Foxconn is that there have been a number of violations of Apple's own standards with the exploitation of Chinese labor, right? So our typical work week over here is 40 hours a week, and Apple has agreements with their suppliers that employees can work up to 60 hours a week, including overtime. And the laws in China actually call for a maximum of 49 hours of labor a week. So much less than 60, right? 11 hours less. They also have been known to do some shady overtime payments made in like 30-minute increments. So let's say you worked 29 minutes or 59 minutes, you'd only get paid if you worked for 29 minutes, you wouldn't get paid at all. If you worked for 59, you'd get only paid for that first half hour. So anyway, the way that they do that is a little questionable. People aren't getting properly compensated for their time. And the main thing that's been in the news lately is the number of suicides in the last couple of years. And up to this day, there have been 17 total, right? And what Foxconn is doing right now, their defense, is they keep comparing their facility to a college campus because I guess I could see why you would do that. I mean, instead of going to class, you go to work and you work 12 hours. I mean, I don't know many people that study for 12 hours a day, but I can understand the parallel of people living on campus, on site, rooms. Our dorms typically have 2 people, theirs have 7 to 8, a pool, hospital, everything I mentioned before, right? But what they're doing is comparing this to an American college campus where the suicide rate on average is about 4 times as much as we've seen at Foxconn. And 17 suicides sounds like a lot just like that, but it could be out of 450,000 people over the course of a decade. So relatively speaking, that's not the biggest number, but that doesn't make it insignificant that that's happening either way. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing that's been pointed out is why are all the jobs overseas? And someone who pointed that out himself was actually our President Barack Obama. So he was having dinner with some of the wealthiest men of Silicon Valley in California last year, and Steve Jobs, the former CEO of Apple, was speaking, and Obama actually interrupted him with a question of why iPhones aren't made in the United States. And what's interesting is that a couple years ago, Apple used to boast that their products were made in America, right? So it was kind of like the all-American General Motors and Ford and General Electric type thing, where part of the pride in buying a product is knowing that it's made in America, it's employing United States citizens and or people in the United States, and there's no labor exploitation, nothing like that, right? So when Obama said that to Steve Jobs, his reply was just simple, and it was, those jobs aren't coming back, which seems like a harsh statement, but that looks like it's the reality right now. And so Apple currently employs 40,000 employees in the United States, 20,000 overseas, and that's just in their design and it's like the white collar jobs, right? But as far as the blue collar manufacturing, all of that goes, they have up to hundreds of thousands of people working not only in Asia but also in Latin America as well in factories. And almost none of those jobs are in the United States. And so that raises the question of why so many people are, who might not have higher education but would like a job that pays about twice as much as minimum wage, but don't have them around here. And that's because they're not here anymore, they're overseas. So due to all this pressure worldwide on Apple to work on its suppliers and, not exploit labor, they've enforced a couple of rules with, specifically with Foxconn, and that is to limit overtime and not to do anything with their salaries, keep them just as high as they were before, but just to limit the number of hours available, so there's a maximum of only 18 hours overtime each week. And this actually hasn't been as effective as they would have liked, because while it is preventing people from working more, the problem is a lot of the employers there, or the employees there, want to work more hours. That's why they're there. They don't want to be there for very long. They just want to stay there for a couple months, maybe a couple years, but they just want to work, make that money, send it back home, or go back home when they're done. And now it's just hindering their ability to do so, and so now they're having to stay there for a much longer period of time, as opposed to each day, but over the course of their lives.